Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. All right, good evening, everybody. You're listening to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the jaws of defeat. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. Justin, good to see you. We've got a good episode ahead of us for the ladies and gents. Some Singapore Grand Prix recap of all the craziness, an entire playing stage of League of Legends. We've got some Magic the Gathering. We've got it all. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. Yes, it is good to see you. Good to be back. Yeah, we had a lot going on. A lot to go over this episode, like he said. So yeah, let me hear about your week. Give me your rose, thorn, and seed here. Let's get right into it.
Sounds good. So for my rose this week, Colleen and I got to spend some good time with some different friends and all. So we went to a party on Friday at her cousin and his fiance's place. Got to see some of Colleen's friends that she hasn't seen in a while. A lot of really good people. So it was cool seeing them. And then on Saturday we went out to dinner to celebrate Willie's birthday. So shout out to Willie, one of our diehard listeners. Today is actually his birthday, so happy birthday to him.
Hey, happy birthday, Willie.
But we went out to K-Pot for hot pot and Korean barbecue for his dinner. Got to hang out, enjoy, and then go back to his place, play some drinking games, and just relax. So that was my rose for the weekend and this past week. My thorn is that in a little over a month, Colleen and I are going to be going on a trip, and today I got an email that this is now the third time that Spirit Airlines has changed our flights, and they now do not work. They're like, oh, you wanted to fly to your destination and you have a layover in between. Well, let's make the flight that you're supposed to catch when you get to your layover leave 2 hours before you get there. Great plan. Who would want to fly to a city and then be like, oh, I can't get to my next place that's part of my round trip. So I spent an hour and a half to 2 hours sitting on hold in a chat waiting for someone to help fix my tickets because I had to find new flights for the trip out, and never got put on with an agent. So now I'm just well, I guess I try again tomorrow.
Damn, man, that's pretty tough. Them giving you the runaround. I guess that's the spirit.
Yeah, to be honest, will not be flying with them again. It's frustrating. Well, most likely, unless it's an insane deal. But this is not good enough of a deal on flights to go through all this headache and nonsense.
Right.
It's annoying because every time I have to search what other flights can get me to our destination, then I have to call customer service and say, hey, you changed the flights. It doesn't work for me anymore. I need it to be switched to this flight.
Right.
And the customer service person typically is kind of slow, and so it takes a while to go through the process. So definitely a thorn. I still have to deal with it. It's annoying. So hopefully I'll get it all squared away tomorrow, but pain in my ass.
Heck yeah, man.
And then for my seed this week, after the wedding that Colleen and I are going to this weekend, we are all weddinged up for the rest of the year. We will have more free time, more relaxation. She won't have to be doing as much planning and things like that for these events. And although we are looking forward to and have enjoyed the weddings, we'll also very much enjoy having some weekends where it's just relaxing, no obligations, and we can kind of chill a little bit. So
Sure. Now, with all these weddings, are you guys like bringing gifts as well?
money,
Is that,
it's just money. You
dude?
don't buy
Even
gifts.
still, that's pretty crazy, isn't it? Like that's a lot.
Yeah, and like Colleen's been to a bunch of bachelorette parties and like traveled and done Airbnbs and like all it's like not a cheap thing to be involved in weddings.
Man, man,
Yeah. I mean,
what?
women have it way worse than guys do, like, because they have, like, the bachelorette stuff is always, like, I think in most cases a bigger to do than, like, a bachelor party. I think guys
Sure.
are a lot more just, like, chilled out about it. They just want to go out, get drinks, like, run around, go to the casino, whatever. Girls, there's, like, themed nights and, like, party buses and, like, all this stuff. It's like they do a lot. Then there's a bridal shower where you have to get a gift, and then there's also like
Yeah, man.
it's a the whole wedding like thing is way more expensive than it should be in my opinion. Like I see like people just like add wedding to the front of something, a decoration, like whatever, and then you can just like charge double for it.
Hmm.
Like food for a wedding is like marked up crazy. It's all of it. It's just
Right.
an expensive venture. So it's
Dude, and then like not even setting one up, it seems like it's pretty expensive like to be a guest of one anymore. That's pretty tough. Or maybe you always
I
had
mean
to be, I don't know.
it's I think the like with the gifts and all the gist is to like whatever your thing should kind of cover the cost of your dinner or like in terms of
Right.
like pricing and all. And so but like most wedding dinners I would think a plate per person is probably between
Oh
like 50 to
man.
$70 a person. So
Right.
like yeah, it's
Okay. From that perspective, that makes sense to me.
but the bride and groom in like most cases are not the actual ones paying for it, so it is like kind of a it depends on the situation, but I think that is the general gist of like at least ballpark figures for gifts. I think that most
Right.
people go off. Some people go crazy, other people's don't. Colleen's family, her parents were at a wedding the other weekend where the girl getting married, her parents own like a ton of McDonald's, I think it was.
Okay.
So it like
That's cool.
they said the wedding probably cost all in all for the entire weekend with all the different things they did like upwards of 120K, like
Crazy.
just nutty. It's insane. So
Yeah, that's quite a weekend. My gosh, all under the golden arches. For
oh yeah.
real.
So so yeah, it's gonna be nice to like enjoy this last one and then be able to kind of relax a bit and just enjoy some peace and
Yeah,
not
not
running
be
around.
giving all your income to the cause, man.
Even just the running around and everything it adds up. Like a weekend with a wedding, it doesn't feel super relaxing
Oh,
typically.
I bet.
So
Yeah. No, that's crazy.
yeah, there's just a lot of events. So that's we'll be going to that later this week. But yeah, looking forward to some do nothing weekends or us figuring out like if we want to go to haunted attractions or check out cool winter stuff once the time comes and whatnot. So,
Hell yeah.
but enough about my week. What's been going on in your week? What have you been up to?
Man, pretty slow pickings over here. I'll just keep it pretty tight. I'll start with my seed, end with like the more interesting thing. So I just have had the idea recently. I think it may be a good idea to start reconnecting in person with some friends and, colleagues and family and peers and coworkers and whatever. I feel like it's kind of been a decent while since, you know, just like a lot of over the internet interactions. And I think coming down for the pod, seeing you in person, getting to play pool, I was like, damn, this is pretty good. And I think I missed this. So just having the idea of maybe working it into the schedule more to just like see people in person and
Nice.
maybe be a little more intentional. So I think that could be a good idea. My thorn here for the week, just a tough therapy day this week. And that was a bit, had me a bit just like emotionally tired, kind of exhausted. But, always good to talk that stuff out. So obviously happy I had it, just a little tougher than it's been previously. So that's interesting. But yeah, just a little emotionally exhausted on that day. And then my rose here for the week, big weight lifted on Monday. I went up to Complete Inbox up in Ephrata, and my man bought up all my games, all my systems, all my cords, everything. I was happy to find out, you know, there's always my fear of like, okay, so this is probably the time that it breaks and doesn't turn on, or it just like, you just hear it sizzle and crash the TV. But I was happy, everything checked out, everything was great. So he handed me a fat wad of dollar bills, and I was off and running. And I know that's a big weight, just like for me, because it's just a lot of physical space that is opened up in the apartment. And then B, it's always nice to get a fat wad of cash. Yeah, it's just a good day. So that's a big rose, thorn, and seed for me there, my friend. But yeah, let's keep it rolling on. Now we did a race companion this weekend for the 2022 Singapore Grand Prix. It was quite a good one. Wet in the beginning. Tell me all about it there, Aaron.
Well, it was a pretty odd race, but even from qualifying, it was kind of weird. We saw at the end of qualifying Max abort two laps that were both on pace to be on pole. We saw him abort one lap at the end, the second to last lap, which was, I'm not sure exactly the reasoning, but I think there may have been a safety, or not a safety car, a yellow flag out or something like that, that they aborted the lap. And then while doing his last lap, they realized if they did that and then did a cool down lap, there would not be enough fuel in the car for Max to have a sample tested. So obviously, he was extremely unhappy. Ended up starting out in P8 because of that when he was on some really good laps. And of course, at Singapore and in the rain that we had on Sunday, it did not help to be starting that far back in the pack. So Charles takes pole, and then on race day, we had our strange rain delay. I'm not really sure, and I saw other people talking about it as well, but like, what is the point of wet tires if they don't let them race on a track that's like wet enough to use them? They're like, oh no, we'll wait an hour for it to dry out, and then everyone just starts on intermediates instead. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know. I guess wet tires are only for when it starts to pour down rain mid race and you change, but in most cases with that, they red flag races because of the weather and all. So
Right.
it's like a bizarre, I don't know. It's just weird. And so they delay for rain that is lighter than what they have raced in previous years for an hour. but eventually we got to it. And Checo from the get-go just had kind of a perfect race. He took a good jump and turned it into P1 on the first lap past Leclerc, and then kind of ran with it. So Checo was the standout performance of the weekend.
Yeah, it was a great jump from him at the beginning. Let me just reverse it here. I want to go back to qualifying. The one thing that I didn't quite understand, I kind of came into the weekend a little late, was George Russell just ending P11 in qualifying. What was that? Obviously, he did a bunch of laps in the earlier stints.
It was so it was raining on Saturday too.
Right.
It was starting to dry up on the track, and for whatever reason, the Mercedes garage put George out to put a lap in with like 5 minutes left on the clock. So like send him out. He does a minute 50, 2 minute long out lap, then goes into his hot lap, comes back into the garage with like 2.5 minutes left, so they don't have enough time to change tires, like get more fuel in, and get him out there to do another outlap before the end. So poor timing from them, because the track just continued to dry up throughout qualifying from the heat of the cars and everything. So everyone basically who was out there at the end of the session putting in last laps were just getting faster and faster, and kind of knocked George down out of the top 10.
Oh man, okay, so that's really unfortunate in that scenario as well, because there was a point in the race where he was actually fastest man on track as well. So yeah, just looking back over qualifying, I was surprised to see that he was kind of out so early. But that does make a lot of good sense. And then so yeah, continued to stay wet even into Sunday, like you were saying. We had a pretty long delay. Now, would you rather have the start stoppage, or just wait the solid hour and then the race goes on unimpeded? Because that seems like a fine way to go about it. I know there was like the most recent precedent is like, harkening back to Spa and people just not wanting that to happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather just have them start under safety car, like, and do it that way. That's not uncommon, or at least not uncommon enough to just like delay it, because for all they know, the weather could just keep coming. They could just keep getting more and more and more rain that just pushes the race back again and again and again.
Right, and then you never start.
Right. So I would rather see it start under safety car. It wasn't raining hard enough that they couldn't have.
Right.
So yeah, I'd just have them start on wet tires, start under safety car, and then like see how it goes. I mean, it did take the track a long time to dry up, but it would have been a very different race. I doubt we would have seen anyone on slick tires if we had started under safety car on wets, like at normal time, because the amount of time they delayed, like that was the time that it would have taken for the track to dry out and get people on like slick tires. So
sure. And then, if they're saying on the radar, though, that it is easing up and could shortly have, some pretty good weather, it seems reasonable to me that they want to wait to start the race in like the most normal conditions as possible. If they knew it's like, oh, it's only this far out, and then we have like a 99% chance that the race continues as is, like it just doesn't seem that like bad to me, especially when like a safety car start seems tough, where so much of an advantage can be taken at the start. Even like you even saw Max like drop back a whole bunch at the start. So I think there's a lot to play for at the start of the race, and it's an important enough phase that having a normal lights out is like in the best interest of everybody. At least that'd be my argument.
I think so, but at the same time, I just think delaying things like weather is not predictable. Like
No.
I've seen plenty of weather. It can
Weather's pretty fucking predictable.
No, I've seen plenty of times where they're like, oh, like these clouds should like break up and it's gonna like the rain's gonna just pass over. It's not gonna rain, it's gonna pass over and then rain later and it just dumps water on you. Like it's not
Well,
there's no perfect science to it.
Are you listening to weather.com or are you getting it from the proprietary F1 radar?
I mean, I like if you're talking to me specifically, I use AccuWeather for my weather around here, where I'm looking at radars and I'm looking at like the trajectory of like storms and things. Like because I have to for work sometimes. There's some situations where like over the summer we had some crazy lightning storms that were coming through and we saw it on the radar like 45 minutes ahead. Like I had to go and clear everyone out of the pool, make sure that like no one's just chilling in there while there's lightning coming down like Zeus is having a party.
Right. And then in 45 minutes did the lightning come?
Yeah, I mean for the most part
it's pretty predictable to me, dude.
You can say that in anecdote, but like there's enough variation that you can't guarantee like that something's gonna go a certain way.
Sure.
So
to make a decision of a race start, you would just rather start them on wets with the safety car.
If it's safe enough with like the best wet weather tires that they have, if it's like going to be safe in that condition on the wet tires, like I don't see a reason to not start it. If there's a race like last year where we had at wherever it was that George got his first podium and it's just absolutely downpouring, and even when they start the race they're never able to get it like going because there's that much rain. That's a completely different like level. This was just like it's raining, the track's wet, and the track's not gonna dry up very soon, but it's raceable. So like I would just race.
Sure. No, it makes sense. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I just think it was a weird way to start with the delay, but we did get some interesting racing out of it. Like I said, Checo had a phenomenal start and just like drove to perfection, no mistakes, led from lap 1 all the way to the end. Barely saw him because he was just so far clear. We saw him on restarts, which he on safety car and virtual safety car restarts where he just did it perfectly. Like we had one stint where Leclerc was pushing to try and get to him and he held him off, and then just within no time the gap was 2-3 seconds again. So awesome for him, and I love seeing Checo win. Great driver, fun person, and like personality from everything I see. Like I'm happy for him. He's a deserving driver to get a couple more wins.
Now with the penalty, is he still the like confirmed winner of the race?
Yeah, so it was a single 5-second penalty. Apparently he had multiple safety car infractions about not staying within the like gap of, you're supposed to stay within 10 car lengths of the safety car as the like person out front. But only a single 5-second penalty. If they had given him 2 5-second penalties for it, or he would have dropped out of first place. Okay. But he, with the penalty, finished 2.6 seconds ahead of Leclerc with the penalty.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was just checking to see if that was the like most updated numbers. So he really like ran away right there at the end when they knew they were getting a penalty.
Yeah, well, they didn't know they were getting a penalty because they didn't decide. They didn't even levy it until after the race. They were like, the stewards will confer post race, which I think is also ridiculous. Like,
Well,
you see what he did during the race and everything. You know that there's some sort of breach of rules there.
right.
Penalize him there and allow the other teams to like have the opportunity to chase after something. Like when we saw Lando chasing down, I think it was Lewis who had a 5-second penalty and caught up enough by the last lap that he jumped him in the standings, I think for a podium, if I'm remembering correctly too. Like that's one of those things that could happen. And like, I don't think it was that difficult of a decision to make. And it took them like an hour and a half after the race to like levy the penalty. It's strange. The FIA is like a little too bureaucratic for me. Like that's too long of a time.
I think it's better than it being decided on air in real time, though.
But
like,
we see them do that all the time, where they're like,
no, I'm saying like with the team principals like able to weigh in. Like I would rather have them swinging like the total opposite way and is like, oh no, we're gonna go through this by ourselves with a fine tooth comb.
Well, I
do want to say though, listening to the radio rewind, they knew that he was going to get a penalty still during the race, so they just told him like, yo, put as much of a gap in between because we don't know what we're going to get. So they knew.
Okay,
they had to separate. Yeah.
But I think the communication has been limited between the FIA and like the team principals already. Sure, so I don't see that coming into play in terms of stewards and penalties and everything like it would have previous years. Right. So in that case, I don't think they need to swing all the way over there because they've already isolated themselves to make the decision by limiting that communication, where they're just like probably going on to the radio with the team principal and being like, hey, this is what we're reviewing for a penalty. And they probably just assume, oh, yeah, like, let's just make sure we're in the clear kind of thing. Like,
well, maybe it's not as cut and dry with like a post where it's going to be levied post race against the race winner. Maybe they really have to weigh that and say, like, do we tack on something to another race? Is it worth it to add it here? Like maybe for them that is a bigger question where it could sour the race result in a way that do they care about souring it that way?
But I think it sours it on that side like anyway because they wait an hour and a half after the race to announce the penalty, so everyone's just pissed off waiting to know who won a race that finished an hour and a half earlier. Like, 2, you're dealing with people who, like, from the perspective of people who are rooting against Checo or rooting for Leclerc or Sainz or whoever else was, like, within that range that it could be. They're all sitting there like they waited that long and he broke the same rule 3 times and they gave him 1 penalty. What the hell? If they gave him 2, I mean, he would have only finished, or he would have finished P2 if they had given him 2 5-second penalties, and he would have been 3/10 off of P3 if they had given him 1 for each infraction. So it's like, like from their end, I think they'd rather be like, oh, like, quick decision is made, they give 1 5-second penalty, and then, like, nothing later, I think people look at that a lot more kindly than you had all this time to think about it and like you didn't swing it the way I want it. Like,
Right.
I think a quicker decision also benefits people in their emotions, that they're like, okay, this is what's happening. Like, we're in it. Like, we can, like, Sainz Leclerc could have tried maybe to push a little harder as opposed to sitting and going maybe like, we don't quite have the pace. Maybe they did have a little more pace than they showed, but just like took it easier when they knew they weren't going to catch Checo, so that they would make sure they made it safely around the track and all, and not have any issues with the rain. Like, maybe they kind of cruised because after they were like, we don't have the pace to catch him, but maybe they had the pace to get closer.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't necessarily think that the FIA wants to be making decisions with the emotions of like a fan base in mind.
Well, no, they shouldn't.
I
just mean they should, like, if they make the decision more quickly, then people aren't going to have as much to gripe about, because they're going to be like, hey, at least my guy had the opportunity to try and catch up past this penalty, or like, they made a decision based on the feeling at the moment instead of this long deliberation just for a single 5-second penalty.
Sure. Like, I guess, I didn't even know coming in to this conversation if Sergio had in fact won the race. I kind of figured he did, but wasn't 100% sure. So I guess that is to your point. But among other things, there were a bunch of safety cars, a bunch of virtual safety cars. That was due to, we had like 6 DNFs, I'm pretty sure. It was way more than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 DNFs. Wait. Holy shit.
No. It was only 6.
Oh, I was looking at the zeros, but that's points.
Oh, yeah. No,
I'm such an idiot.
Just 6 DNFs, but it was a lot. I mean, we lost Alex Albon on lap 1, just immediately binning it and in the rain. Lap 1 was pretty insane. Max and Kevin Magnussen touched on lap 1 as well, which is just like due to Max having a really, really bad start and trying to fight his way up through, and Magnussen just not giving way to a faster car for whatever reason. I thought that was a little bit silly. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And like, Magnussen then ends up, of course, with the lap 1 contact with a broken front wing. He happens to him often. And so everyone, of course, is like, Magnussen's wing is like, send him in. Later in the race, when Lewis knocked his wing around and it's dragging on the ground and sparking, Lewis is like, yep, car's good. I shouldn't have to pit. And they're like, nah, dude, orange and black flag, like, get in there. Right. And like, Lewis, I've heard him, and I don't know, maybe it's a Mercedes philosophy, because George Russell's doing it too, but like, when it's someone else, it's like, get that guy off the circuit, this is dangerous. And when it's them, it's like, no, everything's good and fine and dandy, let these sparks fly up into people's faces. And then of course George in this race as well, fucking just squeezes, like, I forget who did he hit.
George came in on...
Was it Mick? I feel like it was one of the Haas's, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think you're probably right with Mick.
But either way, pushes him into the wall, gets a puncture, and he's like, what was he doing, man? And it's like, George, he was driving a straight line. You just like fucking the entire time just closer and closer until you sideswiped him. Like, we've now seen that a number of times with George, where he like bumps someone or tags someone, and he's like, "What's the guy doing?" And it's like, you just hit that man. Like,
Right.
what are you talking about? So,
Yeah, that tough one with Valtteri where, both of them came together, took them both out of the race, and that was another one where I think Russell was just in a bad spot, right?
yeah, like there have been a number of times, and it's never George's fault to George, and
Sure.
it doesn't even seem like, and I can understand like drivers, like we've talked about it, drivers are always like talking, putting things out there in their own favor to try and like maybe sway people who are listening and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah.
But with him, it's like every single time when they're like blatantly his fault. Like I'm sure there are times where it's been like a close call and you're like, I don't know who's really at fault, like
Yep.
racing incident. But there have been times like this where he just absolutely like pins someone into a wall, and he's just like, "What's that guy doing turning in on me?" And it's like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's like levying your case a little too much, where at a certain point, like it becomes obvious that you are just doing that. At a certain degree, you have to kind of give and take a little bit. So you have this overall impression of being a with it driver, like you understood the
Mm,
scenario, but then, obviously taking your advantage where you can and saying, oh no, that guy came into me, and maybe levying advantage to your favor. But yeah,
yeah,
that's an interesting observation about the Mercedes drivers.
yeah. Well, and we've seen instances where drivers and teams know that their driver is at fault, and they're just like, they don't argue that it's the other guy's fault. They argue that it's a racing incident because they
Right.
know they're at fault. They like ease back on it, and George just doesn't. He's just like out there just winging it and like me all the time. But another person who once again never disappoints when it comes to hitting people, Nick Latifi, just taking Zhou Guan Yu completely out of this race as well. Just hitting him, had no idea he was in like to his side somehow. I I don't know. You'd think that he would be somewhat aware, um, but broke a bunch of Zhou's. Like when he like kind of coasted to a stop there by the little runoff area,
Hmm.
I was like, oh, like maybe it's just a puncture. I don't know. I was like, but then you see the replay and the all the little where they like suspension pieces on his front
Yep.
left wheel just got like
Yep.
snapped, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, he couldn't keep racing on that. So
Yeah, that would not have been good. And in the radio message, Nick Latifi said that there's a lot of spray, and he couldn't see, he didn't realize there was a car there, and it sounded pretty lazy and pretty just not really with it. So definitely unfortunate from the Williams driver to take out Joe, who up until that point was driving a perfectly fine race.
yeah,
So yeah, just a tough one there. Double DNF there for Williams, double Alpine failure. So that's a whole bunch of cars off the grid. It was actually a pretty clear track.
yeah, and that's a really interesting part of this all too is the constructors' implications from both Alpines not finishing and all. Um, I mean that was significant enough for McLaren, who had a really great day, to leapfrog them in the standings. Aston Martin had a great day as well, and was able to jump up. Haas, not as much, with both of their drivers finishing out of the points. They
Hmm.
kind of ended up falling back a little bit. So it's a tight fight in the constructors there at the back of the grid,
Hmm.
but also right there in the middle with McLaren and Alpine. That was a really, really big day for McLaren that they kind of needed to catch back up and put that fight back in everyone's minds.
Yeah, that was truly like a massive point swing for the Alpines to not get any, and McLaren for both of their drivers to have such a great day. We had a 4-5 finish for both of the McLaren drivers, Lando 4 and Daniel 5. And just for Daniel, I think that's going to be a great look for him as far as the driver market goes. I've heard it be said that you're only as good as your last race, and if he has some performances like this and maybe a couple others, that may gain him some decent favor in the coming driver market conversations that he may have. But yeah, just to touch back on the Aston Martin, like you had said, and Aaron and I had touched on it during the race companion this week, is Seb and Lance look really good. Lance being just super consistent. I think our opinion of him may have changed a little bit, and we have an in the points finish for Seb as well. So he's stringing together a couple of pretty good finishes here, going into the closing stages of his career. It's a shame to think that all of these Grand Prix are like, oh, this is going to be his last Singapore Grand Prix. This is going to be his last Suzuka Grand Prix. But I imagine he is looking forward into the future with one of those eyes as well. So yeah, just good stuff from the grid, but massive point swing for the McLaren and Alpine squads.
Yeah, and a well, not big shift, but the drivers' championship fight continues on for another race with Max finishing lower this week. And I mean, just in general, Max had just a rough race and weekend. He didn't really quite have it in the rain, and we saw the mistake off the safety car restart with trying to get past Lando. I think I think it was just the tires weren't warm enough. Tried to get past Lando, ends up locking up super hard and going into the runoff. Fortunately, was able to stay in the race for him, but definitely lost a number of positions. He was trying to pass to move into 5th place, I believe, at the time, and then ends up all the way dropping down to 12th again. So not his best performance, but for the Japanese Grand Prix now, if he finishes P1 with the fastest lap, he is guaranteed the World Championship. If I guess like if Leclerc or Checo finish below P2, he's guaranteed it. Or I guess against Checo at this point, he is guaranteed it.
Gotcha.
So, but if he just wins, so it
okay,
still not actually out of reach, but
gotcha. So you've been really crunching the numbers over there, it seems.
Oh, lots of other people do it for me.
Gotcha. Okay.
I see everyone putting up the information online, so it's definitely not my own work. I'm copying off the guy next to me, looking at his paper a little bit, but
the team of tall and short quants that we have just crunching those numbers.
It's just all the F1 news that I've got. I am really though on a side note with this weekend, I'm interested to see next year's Drive to Survive, because Netflix was with Red Bull this weekend at Singapore, and Max has I guess been willing to participate a little bit with Drive to Survive, and of course it's his worst weekend of the entire year, pretty much, right, except for the 2 DNFs early on. Just a rough weekend. He skipped debrief the one day after qualifying because he was pissed off. It was a whole. He was not a happy camper this weekend. Which I can't really blame him too much for. Seems like there were some errors in qualifying and then errors by him on the race day that I'd be pretty unhappy too. I think he holds himself to a higher standard than that, and so I think I do similar things with myself in like whether it's work or different things that I do. I expect a lot out of myself, and so I can relate to being unhappy that you didn't perform as well as you're like capable of. I've probably talked about it in that manner with like the basketball league that we'd been playing in and everything. I'm sure I mentioned something to that effect, but
oh yeah.
but yeah, so of course Netflix with him this past weekend, and they probably didn't get a lot of Max talking content.
Well, I mean, they may just have pivoted to, a surge from Sergio. That's just
True.
going to be likely what they focus on. Because yeah, even though he's not main character or whatever, it still could make for a pretty good episode.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
one of the other things I wanted to touch on was uncharacteristic race from Lewis Hamilton. He had a P9 finish this weekend, which is like kind of crazy, especially because it was on like on merit. It's not like pace of the car, it's not the package or anything like that. It was just a couple of mistakes and
one really big one, that slide
really
into the
big
wall.
one.
That was rough. I mean, he was fortunate that he was able to keep going there. He could have easily DNF'd.
Yeah, and that was kind of huge for me, was that he was able to get it back. I was interested to see how much work he was going to be able to do, but yeah, that was a burner for sure. Definitely took him out of contention. Only getting 2 points on the day is pretty tough, and yeah, not a race that we're hoping to see many more of from Lewis, because yeah, that was pretty tough. And then Charles Leclerc in the P2 position gets just overtaken by Sergio. Another race where he has pole. Ferrari gives him a great package, a great car. He's able to get it done in the one lap. But yeah, just right there in the race, gets it taken from him by the Red Bull driver. So I would say solid race. They didn't really mess anything up, but just from a individual driver standpoint with Charles, yeah, just kind of handing another one away, isn't it?
Yeah, I had on my notes that it was just kind of a casual race from Leclerc and Sainz. Like they were out there, they drove fine, like past the start and everything. But outside of that, there wasn't much to tell. Like Leclerc put a nice push on at one point, like I had mentioned, to try and catch Checo. Couldn't quite do it. Checo defended well and then was gone again, and so Leclerc just kind of chilled out. Sainz, we saw him even less because he was not keeping up to the pace of Leclerc or Checo, but was faster than everyone else. So he was just kind of like, well, I'm just going to be further and further and further behind the top two, but no one's going to catch me. So it was just like chilling in no man's land. I feel like we saw a number of those races from Max when it was Valtteri and Lewis out front, and he's just chilling in third. Like I can't keep up, but like no one else behind me can keep up with me. So there's like it's a positive to some extent.
Sure. At least they're not lighting their engines on fire or really really losing out. So yeah, pretty relaxed weekend there for the Ferraris.
I think the only other note that I wanted to mention though was this is the first race that we've seen that ended with the timer, the countdown timer of hey, there's X amount of time to get the race in between like 3 virtual safety cars and 2 safety cars or however many it was. They weren't going to finish the race fully to laps in the amount of time needed. So they raced 50. They got 59 laps in. I think it was supposed to be 61 or something like that. I can't exactly recall, but finished with a timer. It was a very odd thing. I don't think it happens too frequently in F1, and this is one of the slower circuits. I from what I understand with the different turns and whatnot. So, just
it was giga analysis with the turns and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why, but with it, from it being a slower track, along with all the rain, all the safety cars and everything, it's a peculiar scenario because none of the safety cars or virtual safety cars were bad enough to be anywhere close to needing a red flag. All the cars were easily retrievable. It was a pretty easy crash cleanup for the most part.
And especially thinking of it from the race companion point of view, there wasn't a whole lot of dead. It didn't feel like we were filling dead air. It felt like we were kind of quickly just on to the next thing, which for what went to time, it sure didn't feel like it.
Yeah, it definitely didn't. So it was interesting to see just that scenario because I can't imagine that we will see a race finish under the countdown timer probably for another few years at least. It's not a very frequent situation. So definitely interesting that that we saw that. So it's one of the other strange tidbits from that race.
Yeah, that kind of made it a standout. Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good note. I kind of even forgot about that. But yeah, just overall interesting race. Tire strategy, pretty much led by the George Russell early hards. Most of it was kind of dictated by what his pace was, and then once they got good info, everybody swapped up, and that was kind of the tire strategy. But yeah, that was pretty much all I had as well.
Yeah, so we have the Japanese Grand Prix coming up this weekend, so I'm going to have to double check times. For some reason, I thought I had seen that it was going to be a time that I thought I'd be awake, but I am second guessing that now. Oh, yeah. I was looking at the Sky Sports information because I was thinking it was going to be a 6 a.m. Race for us on Sunday, but I believe it's actually going to be 2 a.m. or it's going to be a 1 a.m. race. So, late night racing.
Right. Well, it's going to be in the daytime for them, but the nighttime for us.
So, I feel like I'll probably stay up and just watch.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, that's easy. That's easy money. But if it was at 3 a.m., that's tough.
Well, see,
you don't want to stay up, but then it's really hard to just wake up randomly in the middle of the night.
I would dig a 2 a.m. race because, well, purely this weekend because I have to take Colleen to the airport around 4:30 Sunday morning for a work trip. So if I stay up till 1, watch the race, I'm still going to have an hour to kill probably before I have to drive her. So that will be, I just realized that in real time. That's a bummer. So
yeah, you're going to have heavy eyelids during that hour.
I'm going to just sleep the entire day once I get home. It'll be great.
Sure.
So exciting race. I was looking at a bunch of different old races at Suzuka at the Japanese Grand Prix, but I'm also really excited for Yuki to have a home race. I think that's going to be really cool. It was canceled last year because of COVID, and so this will be his first time racing in F1 at home in Japan, which is really awesome. So I'm hoping for him to have a really nice weekend.
Yeah, that's a great point to make. Actually, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, and he's been kind of on the upswing as well, so we may see a points finish here for Yuki. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, we can hope. So, um, I think that covers what we had for F1 pretty much. Did you have any final notes before we move right along?
No, that's all I had. There was a pretty beefy play in group stage and play in knockout stage that we want to touch on here. So probably best get to it. There was a lot of games in a short amount of time.
A ton. We got through the play in round robin. All the teams just playing the other teams in their group once. So 5 games apiece, and then going into the play in best of series to qualify for the main stage at Worlds. Looking at it, I think things generally kind of filtered out the way that we expected for the most part, would you say?
Yes. Although between I'm surprised there was less parity among some of the like the PCS and Oceania and LATAM. I'm surprised there was less wins taken from some of those teams, and maybe disperse more around the bracket. But yeah, I think results wise, pretty what we would have expected. I just thought based on what I saw, I thought they may have taken more games. It looked a little more convincing than what happened, I have to say.
Yeah, not quite as many upsets as I think we've seen in previous playing stages. I think that speaks somewhat to the level of the major regions that were in the play-ins, but like you said, not a lot of as much parity of the developing regions teams as well.
Right.
It seemed like there were a couple of teams in each group that were just kind of the punching bag a bit. And so the top 4 just generally playing pretty well. I will say that just some notes from this playing stage. I did find it very interesting, some of the meta that was developing throughout this playing stage. We saw a ton of priority on some picks that I think we haven't really seen as much recently. We saw Zach come out a couple of times. We saw a lot of Maokai priority, primarily in the jungle. Sejuani coming out, jungle and top lane. The 80 carry and bot lane meta has fully shifted over to like Kaisa, Misfortune, Tristana, Aphelios. So it was a very big shift from what we had been seeing for those bot laners at the end of each of the regions' playoffs.
Yeah, big time. Before I comment on some of the champion picks, I just wanted to say the next time we review these developing regions, I'm going to remember this year's play-ins. So when my analysis next year is, the Istanbul Wildcats, like Holy Phoenix, Saren, and all these players, and our analysis is like, like we've seen them, blah, blah, blah. Remind me that they got shit on. So our analysis shouldn't be, like... Well, I guess what I'm saying is I think there's room for it to be a little more critical, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, but I think...
because there were some tough performances.
There were, but at the same time, I think we had a number of teams that we haven't seen as much in, like teams and lineups that didn't have international experience. So I think it's easy to weigh the international experience pretty heavily for those regions that we're not watching, especially when we see so many of those finals just be 3-0s. Like we weren't seeing a lot of competition in those finals for those regions. So when we see that coming through, I think the expectation is, oh wow, they like were able to look really strong finishing this out. We've seen the developing regions kind of close that gap and everything, but at the same time, they still, I think, in the case of Istanbul Wildcats, like ended up in a pretty hard group too, having DRX and RNG and Mad Lions, who had been a strong contender last year at Worlds, who had a little bit of struggles in the LEC this year, but still I think was expected to have a shot at making it into the main stage. So I think with those three, you kind of expect those to be losses for the Wildcats, but then the other two games against Vietnam and LATAM, you're just kind of up in the air of like, maybe, like, and it just didn't fall their way. Because they didn't, I mean, they had some games that were not that bad, that were pretty competitive. We saw them, I forget if it was, I have to look, but yeah, day one against Saigon Buffalo, 19 kills to 14, 35-minute game. Like, Holy Phoenix had a really nice game. That matchup was a lot closer than we saw them in some of their other games throughout their playing group. So
Yeah.
it's not like they're getting 25 minutes stomped by every team, but they just didn't quite have enough. But I will remind you next year of this year's results and bring that up.
Yeah, just don't let me be so head patty and like, oh, it's whatever. We may have some room to be critical. But yeah, I was just kind of thinking about the play-ins a little. The big surprise for me was Evil Geniuses going 3-2 in the main group and then a double back-to-back tiebreaker win. I thought that was like pretty huge and just a great moment for North. Oh, I dropped my pen.
Oh, I thought you sneezed.
No,
I thought that was a real slick mute. No, I thought it was a slick mute unmute. I
should have took the credit. I should have
I
took the credit.
I think highly of you.
Damn. I lost it all now. But yeah, Evil Geniuses, quite impressive. I thought their play was pretty competitive in relation to the other teams. Obviously stumble game one. I feel like that's okay to being far away from stage experience to kind of falter on day one. And then obviously the only other loss they had was to Fnatic, which they topped the group. So fair enough. I think they're kind of playing out of their mind. So yeah, overall pretty cool. I enjoyed Evil Geniuses games. Loud was I was hoping, man. I thought
they were fun to watch.
They would get through. They were a very fun team to watch. Just could not push it far enough. But yeah, those were just some of the other team comments that I had. Going back to the meta, the thing that I thought was fascinating was the almost 100% pick ban prio on Aatrox top lane, where you were either banning it, looking to first pick it and take get counterpicked or try to get counterpicked, whatever. So I thought that was fascinating. And then in the mid lane, we had a lot of priority on Silas. We saw it blind pick. We saw it as a counter pick. A lot of cool stuff going on, and just a bunch of good ults going on with these tankier team fighting champions. So it was like a Silas barn burner the best of which, could be the Sedge alts or the Leona alts that are going to be present. So yeah, it was a big switch up from what we were seeing in the playoffs of most of the regions in the lead up to this.
Yeah, and I like the Silas pick a lot, and personally, I really like that being a competitive pick when we
Me
get to
too.
Worlds, because it does add so much potential for variation and for it to just be like fun to watch, exciting to watch, because of the stolen ultimates. It really makes teams kind of think through their own gameplay and think about those interactions and everything. But talking to EG again, I was extremely impressed with them as they went through the group stage. Because again, and just for anyone watching, listening, they were without their starting bot laner that they've had all season long of Danny. So Kaori, how I think it's Kaori, but
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how the casters were saying it.
yeah, coming in, and the first matchup is against Upset and Rux, who have Upset is a good bot laner, and against a tough team, and you are fresh into it as the substitute bot laner. He and Vulcan got beat up pretty bad in that matchup, but also on the positive sides for EG, they grew really well throughout the group stage, performed really admirably to get themselves to the point of making it into the best ofs and then of course qualifying into the main stage. Super solid performance, and Impact was the rock that he always is. I loved seeing Impact just have a week. Just he played so well all week long. I was just very impressed with his performances throughout the week.
Yeah, it was fun. I had some of the games up just on the TV in the living room, and it was Evo Genius's games, and the casters were just talking about Impact and blah blah blah. It was like during one of the pre games, they were going through the highlights, and it was funny because Sarah was like, "Oh, like who's Impact? Who's this guy?" And it's so fun to be like, "Oh, dude, this guy, he's been around for forever. He's this, he's that, like blah blah blah."
He's a
So she
world
got the
champion, NA
yeah,
multiple time NA champion. Like he is stud. Love Impact.
got the rundown. He's probably one of the most fun top laners to watch. Just really solid. So yeah, like you said, he had a totally run of a week. I would say one of the standout players. To be fair.
Yeah, and he I'm always just continually impressed. The man has played for over 10 years now professionally. Like
Yeah.
he just continues to perform and be like a solid player. I think he has a really good mindset and mentality, which clearly I think has garnered a lot of respect. I saw some like of the in-game chats from the matchups, and like Evie on Detonation Focus Me was like paying him compliments and back and forth and all, and like it's cool to see the amount of respect he gets, because I think he fully deserves it, and he
Sure.
showed that throughout this. Like you said though, EG making it to a 3-2 tie with both DFM and Loud, winning both of those matchups pretty decisively. I felt really good going into that qualifying matchup with the Mad Lions, and
I didn't think they were gonna 3-0 though.
I did not either.
Dude,
That was
crazy.
just very unexpected. The Mad Lions, obviously, like similar kind of trajectory as EG had, but I would say in a slightly more difficult group with DRX and RNG. And they
Yeah, I noticed
just just come out and swept them just right out the door. First time in League of Legends history that that North America has beat EU in a best of 5 series. Mad Lions, their only best of 5 that they won this entire year was the I guess the pre or the elimination round to go to the qualification round against the Saigon Buffalo. That was their only one that they had. So I think not quite what Mad Lions would have wanted. I think they have a solid team. I think they'll grow and come back again strong next season, but definitely not what I expected on that side in that best of 5.
Yeah, that was super impressive. Excuse me. And especially because the narrative for so long has been that where, we have never taken a series off of EU. I shouldn't say we, but just North America has never taken a series off EU. That is like a heavy like burden to carry around, and a 3-0, like that's even more impressive. It's not even like it was like a knockout drag out slugfest where they eke it by and it's like, oh, we were better on this day. Like, nah, they were pretty handily better than Mad. So that's super cool to see. They get seeded right up into the group stage. And the other result that I was actually kind of surprised about was DFM taking a game off of RNG. I thought they had a really smart draft in that game and played it out quite well. Overall, obviously, that's going to RNG, likely in a 3-0 to my eye. But I think DFM played really strong in the game that they did win.
Yeah, well, and I think they played really strong in game 2 as well for a while. Like, they had a really, really good start to the series. They are, they took a game off of the MSI champions, the top team from the LPL after the spring split. That's huge. I don't think the LJL has taken any wins off of the LPL previously. I don't know for certain, but I would be surprised if the LJL had taken wins off of LPL teams in tournament play and everything previously.
Sure.
They had a really strong game 2 for the first half of it, held very close, but RNG was able to kind of run away with it. And then from there, it was back to what we kind of expect from RNG. Xiaohu playing amazing, Wei just all over the map, Gala getting solo kills and just winning fights with his positioning. It was definitely RNG's to lose, but a huge commendation on DFM for how they performed. They played their hearts out. They got a huge win in that first game, a really tough loss in game 2. So I think if game 2 swings DFM's way, then it's a very different series. You have RNG on the ropes. I think being at 1-1, RNG was able to continue to just draft how they wanted to in game 4. They were styling a little bit. Breathe was just unkillable on the Fiora once he got going. They tried to target him. They tried to take him down, and he was just toying with them by the end of the game a little bit. So I think it does bring up some interesting questions with RNG, looking at them coming into a group with Gen G and 100 Thieves. I think that's, to be honest, probably the best group that they could have seeded into.
Sure.
As opposed to being in Group A with C9, EDG, and T1, because there's an LPL team already two of the other groups. So, I guess they could have, or were they seeded there because they had to be? Because there's actually an LPL team in each of the other groups.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it worked out. All I know is that does seem like a group that they'll have definite chances to take dubs.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it will still be tight. I do think Gen G is the best team in the world right now, so that is not going to be easy. But 100 Thieves, I think, has some potential to take games off, but I don't know if I expect them to necessarily come out on top of RNG in that group completely. So, because I think RNG playing at the top of their game just is so strong. It will
Wait, you don't think Flying Oyster is the best team in the world? Are you sure?
Unfortunately, not. I do hope that they mix it up. I mean,
Best name in the world, though. That's for damn sure.
it's a pretty damn good name. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I did also. I enjoyed watching Loud play throughout this play-in stage as well. They definitely gave off a little bit of a Kaboom vibe. They got the big win off of Fnatic, which was awesome. Fnatic's only loss in the play-ins, so that was very cool to see. And I think that the like play style and like just everything about them had really solid performance, solid energy. I enjoyed watching their lineup throughout, so I didn't want to be remiss and not mention them through this playing stage, really, because they performed very well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I loved Brance's bot gap that he had on his muscle. That was so fucking funny. Lively bunch they were. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed watching them as well.
Yeah, some great misfortune play. Really,
Yeah, they love the Curse of the Sad bullet time combo.
oh, and it's such a good combo if you can get it to work.
Yeah, and if it's strong in the meta, go for it.
So very fun to watch. I mean, it did end up getting banned after game one of their series with DFM. They were like, "Yeah, you don't get to play Amumu anymore. not fun."
Like, yeah, that was clearly his best champion. The Seos, the Amumu player.
Yeah, I think we had like kind of seen that coming in as well. It looked like it was a pretty common champion of his. So good performance from them. I do love seeing like the developing regions take some games off, or at the very least look strong. I do agree with you that there were some teams like Chiefs Esports Club in Istanbul that just didn't look quite up to it this year, but
yeah,
we don't know until we see those teams kind of match up. That's the excitement of Worlds, and now we're rolling right on into the group stages and everything. I believe starting on Friday, we game one, EU versus NA, C9 Fnatic is the first matchup that we'll get to see for these groups.
Yeah, and it was either going to be that one or a Korea versus China matchup as the first one, but they actually may have Korea China as the last game of the day. I'm not sure what the time is, but yeah, it's I think these groups are seeded in a very interesting way. And I think we're gonna have some great games going into the group stage of Worlds 2022, the main event.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. We have actually a lot of, I think for us, very exciting matchups on day one on Friday. So we have C9 Fnatic for game one, G2 versus Damwon Gaming Kia in game two.
Nice. Good to see my boy Showmaker.
Biggest game of the day, 100 Thieves versus Flying Oysters.
Dude, honestly, if Flying Oyster doesn't take a game in this group stage, I'm shooting myself in the face.
Please don't, because I really don't know if they will.
It's such a good name.
It is, but then we have JDG versus EG, so that'll be a good one that we will have some investment in for EG. We have T1 EDG in the following game, and
That's going to be a good
then
matchup.
and then Gen G RNG to close it out on day one. So I mean,
Yep.
it's going to be bangers all the way through. It's going to be
So I was right. China versus Korea as the last game.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. That was
So
just a guess, too, by the way.
yeah, so it'll be very fun to watch. I'm looking forward to it. We've got a ton of games ahead of us, and so just looking at these groups, I do want to kind of get an idea of expectations. I think I will do my bracket on LOL Esports, and I'll post it on the Twitter with what I'm looking at.
Okay.
But right now I'm thinking we're gonna have T1 and C9 1 and 2 in Group A.
Okay.
EDG 3, Fnatic 4. That's my copium, whatever you want to call it. I think we'll see Damwon Gaming and G2 come to the top of Group B. Top Esports, and then I'm thinking Rogue in Group C. And then Gen G, of course, on top. And it's going to be... I'm going to lean towards RNG, but I think that it will be tight between them and 100 Thieves for Group D.
I think those are the most reasonable conclusions to draw. I would, my analyst brain agrees with you, but I'll give you my fan breakdown here if you really want it.
Go for it.
We've got T1, Cloud9. We've got Evil Geniuses, JD Gaming.
Ooh.
We've got Top Esports, DRX, and then we've got 100 Thieves, Flying Oyster.
There we go. You heard it here first, everyone.
You heard it here first.
I think in Group C, that was one of my tougher ones because I think Rogue is a really solid team, but it took me a little internal conundrum to put them over DRX because I think DRX is a really good team as well. So
Sure.
I just like to say in all of these groups, it's going to be, I think, a pretty contested fight. I don't really see many teams having the potential of going 0-6, I guess it would be. So, or how many... It's double round robin, right?
So
Everyone plays everyone twice?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, so that would be 06 if you're not winning any.
So, definitely looking forward to these play-in or these group stages that we have coming up because we will have a lot of games before our next episode. We'll have a good bit of an idea where things are gonna kind of shake out, I guess, by next episode. Oh. Well, they're gonna play Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Gotcha.
And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we'll get, with Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, we'll get
the first round robin done
of the first round robin. So
gotcha.
Yeah. So some good League of Legends ahead of us before next episode. Any other notes you wanted to hit on before we hop over to the rest of the show?
No, I think that was a pretty good little breakdown. I'm happy to have heard your bracket. I'll be looking for that. a little Twitter tweet there to for you to put it in stone. We don't want you going back on anything now.
Oh, absolutely. I will. I'll have to probably rewatch and go through this to make sure I line it all up properly. But I
There you
will do
go.
my best.
But
So
that was all I had for the groups, the playing group stage and knockouts.
awesome. So I know that you had a little bit of other esports news, a little bit of Magic the Gathering before we move on to our flavor of the week.
Just some sprinkles, just a little bit. I just wanted to basically bump this post. October 31st, the CSGO Major in Rio begins.
Nice.
And I'm just kind of putting it in my calendar. I'm going to do my best to keep my eyes on that tournament.
Halloween Major.
Oh yeah, that's actually pretty sweet. I didn't even realize. So yeah, it'll be hopefully pretty spooky, maybe. Maybe not that spooky. Who knows? But yeah, I'm looking forward to a CS:GO major and just getting some eyes on some headshots. I think that'll be fun. October 31st, I believe that begins. So that's just a little note that I wanted to bring up.
Cool.
And then yeah. Last night we were playing some Magic games. Brett swept the house. He brought a new Commander Brew, new Mono Black Commander. Recently, I think it came out in the most recent set named Shieldred. Whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life is like the main effect. He housed us 2 games in a row.
Wow.
It was a pretty brutal beatdown, some fun games overall. And then in game 3, that sneaky boy, he let me do all the dirty work for him. I took out Jason, and then I took out Ian, and then I put Brett's life total to 0, and then I took out Ian, and then he revealed an effect on the battlefield that prevented him from losing and me from winning. So he was able to just like steal it right out from under me.
From that turn, or he just won then.
Well, because in the event that like I had passed turn, Ian and Jason would both be dead, so it would be his next turn, and he just had a mess of creatures that he just like would be able to swing back at me with.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you meant like he was able to like be like, haha, I'm not dead, I'm alive, or if it was
It was like a little bit like that,
but that it would like continue. I find that odd. Like, how in Magic is it like? Trying to think how to phrase it, because
static effect that was on an equipment that he had on the battlefield that I just hadn't factored in. I didn't know the effect of the card. I had overlooked it.
Okay,
so when I went for my big shablam, they were just like, they're just like giggling like, oh, look, he doesn't see that shit. Brett's gonna win anyway. Like, it was just something I'd overlooked.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
They were all dead. He then revealed like, oh, bro, like I have this thing. I was like,
okay. So I was under the impression that it was a like
not a trap card.
Yeah, or like a spell that he could play at instant speed that was like,
right.
You can't, like, if you use this card, you can't go below like 1 life point or something like that. Like
there are cards like that.
Well,
it was not that though.
Yeah, because there are things like that in like even like Pokemon. There's like ability or moves that you can use as a Pokemon that's like, oh, you are like live through what would be like damage that would kill your Pokemon or whatever. So
like a second wind effect or something.
Yeah, and so I thought it was more like that, where he was like, I was thinking he waited until like you knocked him out, knocked Jason out, knocked Ian out, and then was like, aha, now that they're gone, I'm not dead, like, kind of thing. And that would be...
I mean, it was a little bit like that.
Well, but it was something that you could have seen, though. It wasn't like a
right.
hidden mechanic that he was like, I can play this card, and, like,
correct.
You had no idea. Like, you could have noticed it, didn't. It is what it is. It's a card and a deck you haven't seen before, so it's like... Or that you had seen one time, I guess, at that point.
Likely I've seen the deck before. It was in his Samurai deck. I've never seen that card before. So
Gotcha.
I wasn't even, like, checking for it. But, yeah, like, overall, my mistake, whatever. I'm not mad at it.
Oh, no, but...
It was just funny.
Yeah, no, I was... that's why I was like, I don't know how... Because I feel like it would be a little funky if he's, like... just happened to be next person in line, and then you go to wipe out the next two people, and then he's like, haha, like after the fact.
Sure.
Because that's a weird thing with Magic, with it being a 4-person and not a 2-person game, in Commander at least, that you are, like, if it's a 1v1 and it's that kind of trap card deal, then it's a little like easier because they have to play it at the time that you're playing, as opposed to like there could, based on what you're telling me, there could be the potential for someone to get wiped out, have the next two people get wiped out, and then pull that kind of card and be like, but I'm not dead. And like continue
depending
playing.
on what the turn order is,
right? Like that's
some shenanigans like that.
That's kind of a weird thing to me. That like, I feel like there should be some sort of rule in place about that kind of thing. Like, if you are countering. So, for instance, say. You knock Brett out, like you take his life total to 0.
Right, technically speaking, yeah.
You go on to start, like, attacking.
Pointing damage at Ian.
Right. If he has 0 life total and he has instant spells, he can't throw those out anymore.
He would have to do it before his life total hit 0, which he would likely be able to do in response to any of my game actions. At any point during my turn, if he has an instant speed effect, he can respond to one of my effects and say, hold on, let me put this
before his life total hits 0.
Correct.
So in this instance, if his life total hits 0 and he has some negation of some sort that keeps him alive, would he have to play it then, or could he wait?
Says he's done. State-based effect says he's out of the game. 0 life total, you're not in the game anymore. Your turn then like moves to the end phase, and then the next player in turn order gets priority. It's not necessarily their turn is over. They're out of the game, and then the next player can cast an instant at the end of their turn. But there's no like, okay, while my health's at 0, I'm going to cast this. You would have to do it when your health is at like 1 or 2 if priority is available.
Okay, so...
Yeah. If I've explained that properly.
No, that makes sense. So there is not potential for someone to just like wait out the other people getting wiped out and be like, oh, surprise, surprise. It was just the fact that it was already on the field and like you just
overlooked it.
Okay, cool. No, that actually makes me happy because I was about to be like, that's a little bit of bullshit that should probably be fixed.
Right. Like we ran into some like game breaking interaction where
it happens.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So I'm happy you dug in.
Yeah, because I mean, those things happen. There are all sorts of opportunities in card games for weird
Oh yeah.
interactions to come
Oh
up.
yeah.
Whether it's a game like Magic that has a lot of interactions, or
Mhm.
it's other games like me and I think I'm sure I've mentioned it on the podcast at this point, but like me and my friends played this game Asshole when we were in
Yep.
Spain, and
Yep.
like I broke the game somehow. We to this day cannot remember how I did it, but we
Sure.
remember the rule that came out of it, that we're like, a 4 cannot be your last card. Like
Mhm.
that is the rule that was caused by me breaking the game. And this is a game that we have played for years and years, and it has very few interactions. So I can imagine with Magic, it's a lot more difficult. So I am glad that there's some sort of like priority and order in place for those things, because I can
Yeah.
imagine it getting like broken very easily if you don't.
Oh yeah, without play testers and game designers, paying a careful eye. But no, it was just a really funny board state. Like it's a funny world where like your deck 100% does the thing, and then player three or whatever wins. It's like, all right, that's an interesting way for this to go.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think we had a great evening of Commander games, and like I was saying as my seed earlier, it's just like nice to gather in person and see everybody, especially when life is quite busy. But yeah, those were just quick notes on the Magic games. Like I said, I'm happy you dug in because those were some good questions. But yeah, let me throw it back to you. Let me hear your flavor of the week here.
Cool. So for my flavor of the week for the food, it is the birthday dinner for Willie that we went to at K-Pot, which is Korean barbecue and hot pot. So it's like all you can eat. You get to order all the different things that you want to cook in your soup or cook on the little hot heated pan pad thing. I don't know what to call it. In the middle of the table for the Korean barbecue. So it's always a really good meal, super filling. I think I really can only do it maybe once or twice a year at this point, because it's just tons of meat and like
Yep.
buffets don't intrigue me like they did back in the day.
Yeah, a lot at once isn't cool to me.
And like sometimes it's okay to just eat a lot of food, but like
Sure.
I think in general, like those times are fewer and further between for me at this point. But it was delicious. Loved hanging out with everyone. So that is my food for the week. For my music, I took the time yesterday to go ahead and put together. So on Spotify, what I basically do as I'm listening to the made for you playlists or different like other playlists is I'll just like songs and put them in my liked songs like list.
Hmm.
And then at some point down the road, I just put them all into a playlist together. Um,
Hmm.
and like any other like songs that like don't fit that general vibe, I'll like put them wherever they belong. So I
Sure.
did that yesterday and put together a fall playlist. It's a very different vibe than my summer playlists, and so I was jamming out
Well, it
to
would
it.
have to be, of course.
Well, it's just like my music tastes vary a lot based on weather and
Mhm.
temperature and sunlight and
Good to
whatnot.
know.
So,
Just to know
uh,
for sure.
yeah, so it was fun putting that into a playlist and getting to enjoy those all together. And like I like the little tweaks here and there of making sure that songs fit, or finding songs that I'm like, it doesn't quite fit. Like I can move this to this other playlist that I listen to like on occasion, and if it comes up while I'm listening to that, like that'll be cool too. But this is like
Right.
the main seasonal playlist.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then for my visual medium, I was going back and watching over the past week. I've watched a number of just as I was going to bed, a number of the past Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka.
Very cool.
There's a lot of pretty exciting races that have happened there. There's Kimi Räikkönen wins. There are accidents and craziness, last lap passes, world championships won there. So there's a lot of history there with it, especially in the spot of the calendar that it's typically in. With the world championship being decided there at some points in time and everything. And so it was cool kind of going back. I'm trying to find different good races and good eras of races to watch, and it's funny because it's brought up these like thoughts for myself, particularly about like current F1 racers, because I think the number of like this era of F1 when I joined as a fan, there are either kind of longer standing people that have been around previous, so I'm partial to the previous to my fandom. So I'm partial to them being like, wow, they've been in F1 a while, so I have a sort of reverence to that. But then there's also a large group of younger drivers that have come in like while I've been a fan, and a lot fewer people who have left due to being just like not quite up to snuff. Like there are people like Nico Hulkenberg, who was in F1 for quite a while and just eventually like didn't get a seat. Kimi Räikkönen, who was just a long-standing F1 legend, world champion, that eventually was just like, all right, I'm gonna retire and like be out of it. All these other like really solid drivers, and then the young drivers that we have seen have kind of just grown through, and we've only had a couple of like really new people to F1 since I'd say you and I were becoming fans. I mean, even Esteban Ocon was like in F1, out of F1, back in. And so seeing these guys like from different periods of time, and I'm just like, I just watched the like 2007 race. This guy's not in it. I watched the 2009 race. He's in F1. And I watched the 2010 race, and he's gone again. Like there was a lot. It seems like there was a lot more turnover to some extent in some of these older seasons that I didn't necessarily realize as a part of F1 because it hasn't been a part of my like watching of F1. And so I think that I've become, I realize that I have become like attached to drivers that are like probably should be more replaceable than they like I imagine them being. So it was kind of like a little twist of my perspective on things. Like there are some people that like Antonio Giovinazzi that I was like, he's in, he's fine, but like if he's gone, I don't care. That's the only person that I really can think of in my time of watching F1 that I'm like, they haven't been in F1 for a while and they didn't stick in F1 for a while. Like even Nick Latifi, like he has been there like my entire time of being an F1 fan. So like even someone like that who is, in my opinion, going to like he should be out of F1 next year, in my opinion, and like will in the grand scheme of F1 be kind of a blip on the radar, just a back marker who was there for a few years, like. But I still have a little bit of an emotional attachment. Like he's impacted a lot of races in different ways, primarily crashes, but he's been around for a lot of like big moments for my fandom. So it was kind of cool, like looking at some of these older Grand Prix, and it like flipped a switch in my brain that I'm just like, yeah, some of these guys should just be out after a few years. Like you get a shot, and if you don't perform, just get rid of them. Like I don't know. I root for some of these guys to like perform well, and at some point it's just like, all right, time to try something new.
Because they are so forward facing in the media, the driver is like partially the face of the team to a certain degree, and I wonder how much was that the case for all of the teams. I imagine there were more just kind of singularities.
The
and then
media
just
has to have driven the industry so much to some extent in terms of those like lineups and things. Like a team back in the day, back probably 15-20 years ago, didn't give a shit what fans cared about, except for maybe like Ferrari caring about the Tifosi. Like everything else was just like, is your driver winning races or not? And now like we have drivers who they are media personalities. They are like brands to some extent.
Well, and even part of our conversation about Daniel Ricciardo even was like, well, he's great for the brand.
He brings money. Like that's a big thing in F1 with how expensive the sport is nowadays. Like it is not cheap, and sponsorships are important. A team like McLaren doesn't necessarily need those, but a team like Haas or Williams might. Like that's where it kind of comes into play, is like, hey, you haven't performed super well, but like you got money and you're not performing that badly. Like or to the point of like you bring money and you bring knowledge and experience that can help us like improve for the future. Daniel Ricciardo is one of those guys that could be that guy. Fernando Alonso, similarly. Hey, like maybe Aston Martin next year is not going to be top of the table, but maybe with Fernando Alonso and their goals and ideas and trajectory, they're like, hey, maybe with these two things combined, we could jump up. Like there are those things that are valuable from not only the like age perspective and knowledge perspective, where I think in previous iterations of F1 and older seasons, that guy becomes a member of the team or a consultant or a coach or like someone like Niki Lauda coming to Mercedes and helping them out as on a consultancy kind of basis. Whereas now you're like, oh, this guy can bring us sponsorships too. Like, hey, not a bad deal.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I was just using that to illustrate like how much it has truly changed. Where now it's not just like, oh, how fast is he? It's how much money can he bring along? Is he good for the brand? What are his TikToks like?
Yeah, so it's been cool watching those races because they are exciting and fun to watch, but also I think my perspective has kind of changed a little bit on some of those previous ideas that I had about current drivers and all, and like kind of leans me more towards like, hey, if they're not up to it, get them out, bring someone is, give them a shot, like and kind of root for the continued competitiveness of F1 over faces I know. So it's but that's my visual medium. Dug deep into it, but that is the my flavor of the week. Justin, let's hear your flavor of the week and what you've been having.
Nice. No, I'm glad you dug in there. That's very cool. Actually, you gave me a title idea. If you're listening and you like the title, well, Aaron came up with it. My music here for the week. I've been shuffling through my vinyl, getting through the list. One that stuck out here is Zeppelin 4. Um, uh, Battle of Evermore has Stairway to Heaven on it, of course, when the levee breaks. Going to California, and it is just a classic. And I think even like I'm quite nostalgic for it. It's an album that I was turned on to, I think, like very early on. So it's just one that I have a lot of reps with. Recently got the vinyl. It's still in pretty good condition. I'm not sure how many times I've touched that. But yeah, great listen through. So I was just super pleased with that. So Zeppelin 4, great listen. My food here for the week, Sarah cooked up a nice twist on the chicken nugget. We did a buffalo cauliflower,
Ooh,
and
that
the
sounds good.
way it was quite tasty. The way you cook it up, it has the consistency of a chicken nugget, but with bursting with buffalo flavor. Um, so that was really interesting. As I've talked about before, we're kind of exploring the vegetable realm and seeing like what could be done there. I talked about having a spaghetti squash, and that was fucking dope. So I'm looking forward to another one of those.
Well,
So it's just
buffalo
the next entry.
cauliflower, that's like a pretty popular like alternative for like that. I've had like buffalo cauliflower bites instead of
Oh yeah.
like popcorn buffalo chicken type deal, and like
Oh
they're
yeah.
like I enjoy them. Like no
It was
no
great.
no knock at all. Like I enjoy chicken, but like I'm not gonna be upset with buffalo cauliflower bites or anything like that. That sounds
Right.
sounds delicious too.
That's how I feel. Like I like a chicken nugget. I like a buffalo cauliflower too. It
Yeah.
was it was pretty nice. And then my visual medium here for the week. I checked out episode 1 of author Michael Pollan has a documentary on Netflix. Not sure what the documentary is called, but he has a book out called How to Change Your Mind. The doc is about different psychoactive substances and how we're using them now to treat different mental uh, different mental things going on.
Netflix documentary
It's on one of the streaming services, so I'm not
because
100% sure.
there's How to Change Your Mind, which is the one that's on Netflix that talks about like a lot of those things, but also he has Cooked, which is I guess a series maybe he's done.
Gotcha. No, it's not
Um,
Cooked. It's the first one that you talked
okay,
about.
How
But
to Change Your Mind.
Sarah
We've
really
we've
enjoyed Cooked.
we've talked about watching How to Change Your Mind, but every time it's come up when we're like scrolling through, it's just been
Mhm.
like, I'm not really in the mood for that. But it looks interesting because,
It's
yeah, it talks
fascinating.
about a lot of psychoactive substances and how they act. And then, like you were saying, the ideas of how is this not only usable as a recreational thing, but whether it's using LSD to treat uh, veterans with PTSD or things like that. Like I think, based on what you're saying, I'm imagining it goes into that vein of
Oh yeah.
things
Oh yeah.
quite a bit. So
Yeah, the like therapeutic and clinical uses of it. So yeah, it was fascinating. I'm looking forward to checking out the other episodes. I have not read his book. We have it on the shelf. And maybe once I finish what I'm working on right now, that may be one that I pick up because it's quite interesting. One of the individuals that they have there telling his story is quite inspiring, and it's like, yeah, why is this not in the hands of more people? It sounds
nice.
like it just sounds like a neat, like a no brainer to me. But yeah, that is my flavor of the week here. A lot to chew on, obviously. But that does bring us to the end of another great episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. I'm gonna do Aaron's bit real quick and then see if he can do my bit when I hand it off. We are on Twitter at Tall and Short of One. Throw us a tweet, throw us a comment, tell us what you liked about the show, tell us what you may not have enjoyed so much about the show. Tell a friend. But other than that, just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and listening. It truly is a blast.
Yeah, as Justin said, we always just want to reiterate like how much it means that people enjoy listening and come to check it out week after week. We really appreciate you all. One last happy birthday, Willie shout out. Gotta sneak one more in there.
Happy birthday, Willie.
So that does bring us to the end. We appreciate it so much. Thank you for listening. Peace out.
New episodes every Thursday. Peace.